Microservices architecture is an approach in which a single application is composed of many loosely coupled and independently deployable smaller services or APIs. This architecture is slightly different than a monolithic application in which everything is coupled together in a single application. Because of that, microservices have their own technology stack, inclusive of database and data management model. What this means is, let's say you have an application and in there you have multiple microservices. It is not required that all the microservices should follow the same technology stack. Some microservices can use REST, others can use gRPC, or even something different. There is no restriction on any compatibility for programming languages if you implement a microservice architecture. Then microservices communicate with each other over a combination of REST APIs, event streaming, and message brokers. Since they communicate with APIs and message brokers, that's why they can implement their own technology stack. And microservices are organized by the business capability, with the line separating services often referred to as bounded context. So business requirements will divide all of the microservices, and each service is responsible for its own functionality and the smaller scope. Let's take a look at this with a better example. We will first understand how a traditional monolith application would look like. So if you have a big shopping cart application, you will have products, you will have a shopping cart that you can save in the database, and then you will have an order component. So in a traditional ASP.NET Core application, all of them will have their own models, views, controllers, but everything will fall under one application. You can use areas, create new folders, and get fancy on how you organize everything, but still everything will fall under one project, and then there will be one central database that will hold all of the data. That being said, there are few advantages of this architecture. A monolith application centralizes all the data, because of which all of the code resides in one place. If a developer has to make some changes, he can run the application and all the pieces of application will run together. So it's easier for a developer to debug or make any changes. Most companies have their application as a monolith application, and that works absolutely fine. But once the application starts to grow and you get more and more components and data, that is when the actual problem starts. In a monolith application, there are tight dependencies, so later on if the project grows, then getting rid of those dependencies is a nightmare. That being said, let's take a look at how the same application would be implemented in a microservice architecture. So in this case, you can see all the components that we had, like product component, shopping cart, and the order component are their own ASP.NET Core applications. On top of that, you should notice that all of these three applications have their own separate database and they do not share the database at all. Then there will be a separate ASP.NET Core application that will interact with all three of these individual microservices. With this split architecture, maintaining all of the services are quite easier. Each of the service can be implemented in a different programming language if that makes more sense. And because they are not dependent with each other, they just communicate in a REST API or using some of the message brokers. With this, there comes another advantage. Let's say only the order component is growing drastically. In that case, it is easier to scale just the order database and not touch any of the other databases. So that gives you a brief overview of how the architecture is different from monolithic application as compared to a microservice architecture.